Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Subtext Podcast Archives. These are the long-lost episodes of the Subtext that were originally produced between 2015 and 2017. In 2018, the Subtext moved to American Theater Magazine, and we've been producing the pod there monthly ever since. These time capsules are being shared here in their entirety, including plenty of outdated references and advertisements for events far in the past. If you enjoy them, please subscribe to the current podcast feed for the Subtext or stream new episodes on the website for American Theater Magazine. Thank you for listening. Hello, friends. Welcome to the 20th episode of The Subtext. I am Brian James Polak, and I've recently returned from a long trip to Poland, where I was immersed in some of the most incredible theater I have ever seen. I saw 21 productions of plays in 2.5 weeks. It was amazing and inspiring. And one thing to note, dear playwrights listening to this podcast, the theater in Poland is a director's medium. The playwright certainly does not appear at the center of the theater world, just like we think we do here in the United States. Anyway, if you are currently listening to this on iTunes, please rate the show and leave us some comments. Consider it a belated holiday gift to me. Now, this month's guest is Deb Hiett, whose play, Super Variety Match Bonus Round, is currently running at Rogue Machine Theater. Yes, the title is Super Variety Match Bonus Round. I kind of love that title. It's running for the next couple weeks here in January 2017. I first knew Deb as an actor and was surprised to later learn she also wrote plays. What wasn't surprising was learning she's excellent at both. I'm very excited to talk to this Alabama native starting now. Are you excited for the game? The big game?
I'm so excited.
Yeah?
It's going to be a really good game.
I hope it is. I hope it is because it's so, it should be because, Clemson's
They're really good.
Pretty good. And that's who they played last year, right?
Yes.
And it was a really close game.
And it was a good game,
And they kind of won on
Oh no, we won. We won clearly, but it was.
Was it a blowout last year?
No, it wasn't a blowout. But
I thought they won on some
crazy
play happened.
Not a technicality.
Not a technicality. No, like something like a blocked field goal or something. I can't remember.
It was close. I don't remember the score. I tend to move on as soon as we get the trophy. I move on. Do you follow Alabama all year long, or just sort of when they're about to win the championship again? Well, pretty much when we start the season to win the championship again.
Yeah.
But my whole family is just obsessed.
Yeah.
And I actually, my mother is a big Alabama fan, but my father went to Auburn. And the same thing with my aunt and uncle.
Oh, wait, didn't you write a book about this?
I did. I wrote a book, a very important book called When Mommy Loves Bama and Daddy Loves Auburn.
A very important book.
It's a seminal tome.
No, but what was it about?
No, it's a spoof of a children's book with very beautiful and slightly goofy illustrations. And it just sort of talks about, from the child's perspective, what it's like to grow up with these challenging conflicts and how you have to figure it out. And and pretty early on, you have to choose. But the children in the book don't want to choose because no matter what, they have a winner in their house. It's like they're trying to see the bright side. But yeah, it's a really big deal.
I grew up in New England, and Boston College is like the only major college football team in the entire region. And in New Hampshire, there's no major college football team.
Right.
So I always looked at Boston College, but they're always one of those teams that will win just enough games every year to go to a bowl, but not the big bowls. Yeah, not since like Doug Flutie in the mid 80s,
absolutely.
84 did they go to like a major game. So I never really hooked into college football.
No.
And then I went to grad school at USC, so I'm technically supposed to be a USC fan, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but for so many years recently, they've been full of like criminals and cheating scandals
they've
that
had some
I'm kind
challenges.
of like, am I going to root for that?
I know. They've definitely had some challenges.
But then
and
this
the whole
year-
Sarkeesian thing, and now
God.
he's in Alabama.
I know. And you had Lane Kiffin.
We did.
Who he was the coach when I was in grad school, and people hated him. They hated
Again,
him so much.
challenges.
He's a really hateable guy.
He's a big personality.
I want to go back. I want to go back to your Alabama-ness, because this is one of the many things about you that I've been so interested to talk about.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah. So, are you like born raised Alabamian?
Nicely done. Actually, I was born in Georgia.
Yeah.
And we moved to Birmingham when I was 9.
So southern through and through.
Deep south through and through. And all of my people are in Alabama, and for many generations. Alabama and Tennessee. So all deep south, for sure. And storytellers, all of them, going way back.
Like in what way?
Like my grandfather on my mother's side was not only a country doctor and grew up in rural Alabama, was also a surgeon, but he was a celebrated writer, and he wrote 3 books of stories, some of which were about his growing up, some of which were fictionalized accounts of. He had the saying that bread is good, toast is better, toast with butter is even better than that, and jam, forget about it. Like, so he would embellish stories about his youth, and
but the story would still have the bread in it.
It's
right?
still have the bread in it.
The bread would always be there, right? Okay.
And a little
I like
honey. Oh, it goes good. So he was famous for Lions Club speeches and these different presentations he would make at these medical conventions. And he started writing stories. And later, in his later years, when he had to kind of give up medicine, he published these books. And he and his brother Amos went and fought in World War I. And so he wrote a book, How Amos and I Won World War I. You know, it's that kind of thing. And then he came back actually and played football for the University of Alabama. So, the roots are deep. But yes, storytellers going way back. And I can just remember listening, just soaking it up like a sponge always. And not just on my mother's side, but my father's side. And just that being so much part of the fabric of time spent growing up in Alabama.
Have you always been writing?
Yes, but I never. Yes, but
I asked because my introduction to you was as an actor. I remember you understudied, right? You, at Boston Court years ago, and then I tried
the government inspector.
Oh, was that the show? I couldn't remember what show it was, and then I tried to connect with you to do a play of mine, like a reading or something that I was trying to put together, and it didn't work out. And so that's how you were locked into my head. So when you were introduced as a new member of the Playwrights Union, our playwright group, I was like, she writes plays? Wow.
Well, it's funny because that's kind of how my whole career has gone. Like early in my life, I was a musician and a dancer, and started studying acting really in high school, and went to a very small high school that had a wonderful drama program and a teacher that had studied with Uta Hagen, and it was very intense and very on a sort of a professional track. And I was taking dance classes at the university, even though I was still in high school. And so I graduated high school a little early, and I went to college for a couple of years, and I actually moved to New York before I finished college on a dance scholarship. And I was doing musical theater in New York for a while, and I was always writing, but it was more just because I wanted to and less because I felt like I was a writer and that's how I was going to express myself.
Right. That wasn't your creative form at the time.
It wasn't. Right. It was more for my own purposes, for my own sanity, and and I was always journaling. And then when I was in New York, I did a tour through Europe of West Side Story that was actually the original choreography that was set by Lee Theodore, who ran the American Dance Machine, and she was the original Anybody's in the original West Side Story on stage. And she was a big influence on me. And I came back from that tour, and I was going to all these cattle calls for these big shows, and I wasn't getting cast right away, and that wasn't part of the plan. And so I started auditioning for different things as opposed to just musicals. And at the time, you really needed your own monologue. You needed a couple of different monologues, and everybody had the same monologues. And so I thought, well, I'll just write something different. And then other actor friends said, where did you get this piece? And I was like, oh, my friend wrote it. I have a friend that writes these.
Right.
And so then I started writing monologues I started writing and selling original monologues. And so, I mean, I was making money doing that for a while. But I still wasn't really a writer. Like, in my mind, it was very much about, it's all to serve the purpose of getting acting work and being a performer.
Right,
And then I decided to go back to school to NYU through the Gallatin program. And
to finish, were you
get my
starting
degree.
over, or were you finishing what you started?
I was finishing. I had been 2 years at university, and so I was finishing my undergraduate degree, which was very important to my parents, especially. But I also was kind of ready to have the structure of a program that I felt like I was kind of floating, and I felt like I just needed that structure. The great thing about Gallatin was you kind of designed your own major, and you still do. I mean, it's slightly different now than it was when I went there, but the idea was you could take life experience and apply it to a specific curricula that you sat down with an advisor to figure out, but you were able to translate life experience to specific credits. And I had a band with some friends called Orson Welk, and we had actually made an album. We had produced our own show downtown, performance art space, and so there were all these different courses that actually sort of lined up with those projects. So I was able to translate that to getting credits, which was really helpful and also really fun. But they made you really work for it. I mean, you had to really justify your life, and that was also kind of therapeutic. But the program sort of provided me with an opportunity to focus on something besides performing, because when I decided to go back to school, I didn't want to go to Tisch. I thought I don't want to take on debt to learn how to learn about the business of acting. I thought I want to be a more critical thinker. I want to figure out how to find my place in the world.
What was your hope and dream at the time to finish school and then have an acting career, like to support yourself as an actor?
I mean, I don't know. That's a really good question, because I think now, why didn't I just go to Tisch and do that? And then, because I realize now a lot of what you get from those programs, in addition to wonderful instruction about that, is you get a Rolodex, for lack of a better word. Your compatriots in the program are going to go out in the world and do things and run theaters and have connections, and that's a thing that when I moved to New York I didn't have. I mean, I didn't know anybody there except for the person who was giving me the dance scholarship. So that felt like a real gap in my education. So why didn't I do that? I don't know. I'm glad I didn't, because I started writing more seriously at NYU, and not just monologues, but short stories and novellas and plays, but really finding joy in writing as opposed to doing it for something else or with something else in mind. It really became something that I loved to do and felt like I had a gift for. And that was a revelation. And so even then I wasn't thinking, whoa, I'm a writer. And I wrote a one-woman show that I performed in New York, and the Village Voice had this great things to say. And I thought, yeah, but I'm not a writer. I mean, that was just me performing. And
it was still you creating material for yourself.
Yes.
So you were still identifying primarily as the performer, and the writing was just to feed that.
Yes. Although I was also, yeah, I guess that was the primary function.
Mm-hmm.
But the joy and fulfillment I was getting out of the process of writing was new, as opposed to this is a tool I can use for this other thing. Suddenly, the building the tool was very fulfilling in a way that it hadn't been before. So that felt good. And when I got out of NYU, I was working, suddenly I had a student loan to pay back. So I started working in the corporate world in publishing, kind of. It was as digital marketing started really taking off. And I was working for the Book of the Month book clubs, the specialty book clubs, the computer book clubs, science book clubs, all the book clubs, and how they were beginning to transition to the new digital world.
Right.
And which was super exciting, and which was really helpful for me to grow and learn and have that responsibility, and also to have a regular paycheck and insurance and all those things, even though I was making no money. But at the time, it was coming in regularly, and that was different and really helpful. And but it was leaving me a lot less time to perform and
Were you going
write.
on auditions?
I've not really.
So you were in this tour of West Side Story, and you were in a band, right? So you did a lot of these things. Like, where did these things come into this postgraduate New York life of yours?
The postgraduate New York life sort of became all about the corporate work. And that's when I started to kind of fall into a hole for the first time in my life. And just felt really stuck, really disconnected. Not stuck, disconnected from what I am supposed to be doing. And in that kind of haze, I wasn't miserable. I had good friends, and I had some money coming in, and but it was not. It was I understand how people start sleepwalking.
Yeah.
In their lives, and if you don't have something that helps wake you up, you can stay there for a really long time.
I completely relate, because I spent my entire 20s kind of working out what the hell am I, and it started almost immediately after graduating, having a bit of sort of crisis, wondering if I have this job now, I have nothing else in my life. I wasn't a creator or creative person, a theater writer or any actor or anything. And I got petrified that I was going to spend 45 years going to work and coming home, and that was it. And I was 22, 23, going, what the hell is the rest of my life? And then later in my 20s, I had spent my 20s trying to be an actor and doing theater and improvisation and all that kind of stuff, and none of that fulfilled me. And it was in this corporate world where I was sleepwalking and making great money, not giving a shit about it. And then starting to, I was writing in a legal pad during big, important business meetings, and I was drifting in my head away, and I was writing, and that was sort of so I can relate to what you're saying, because that's the corporate life is sort of like the malaise of that is what locked me into being a writer.
When you graduated, did you think, oh, now I'm on this track and I'm going to be an actor, and did you have a specific idea of what it would be like when you graduated, and therefore when that didn't materialize?
I went to college because that's what I was supposed to do, and that's what all my friends were doing. I wasn't ready for it, intellectually, psychologically speaking, and I had nothing of specific interest. I was an athlete before college, but not a good athlete, so it wasn't like that would be a thing I'd do in college. So I spent 4 years just like trying this, trying that, trying this, trying that, and developing a personality.
Sure.
And by the time I graduated, all I had was a personality. I had no particular skill set and no specific interest.
And no passion to...
No,
I see.
Nothing. So I just traded on my personality, and I got jobs based on like me being able to sit down with people and talk. And it was me thinking about that, sort of self-identifying and becoming self-aware, where I was like, well, I'm kind of a class clown. I'm kind of an attention getter. That feels like what an actor is. So that's how that's literally the thought process. Oh, so I guess I should be an actor,
right?
So people will look at me more,
right? Sure.
And then I did it, and I just wasn't good at it. But I liked the idea of creation, and so that's how it went from. But it took me years to then start to, instead of learn somebody else's words and speak them, to start to write my own.
See, I always had this passion. I always had this drive and this sense of clock is ticking. This has got to work out the way I imagine it, the way I dream it would, exactly according to my plan. And that's almost a worse curse, I think, than kind of floating, because when it doesn't pan out that way, and I think it can never pan out the exact way that you think it will, and sometimes that's the biggest blessing ever. But when it doesn't, you feel like a train off a track, and if there's another track there, well, look, I'm on a track,
right? But
it's not the right train. You're on the wrong line.
Yeah.
But it's like, but I'm moving forward, and I'm on a track.
I'm doing something.
Yeah. And everyone says I'm good at this, so I could just keep doing this, and it's not terrible. It's not terrible.
It's the I'm good at this thing I don't care about that is essentially like golden handcuffs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And really, there is nothing terrible about it. You know what I mean? It really wasn't this miserable, hateful job where people yelled at me. No, these were wonderful people, and it was interesting work. And I think it was very easy for me to get into that mode. And when I sort of realized something had to change, then it felt like everything had to change. And all this kind of culminated just before 9/11, which I watched from my office window at my job.
In Manhattan.
And so that was kind of a big day. And it for, of course, so many people, but it really drove home the point that tomorrow is not promised, that, all these years I had this image of myself, I'm seizing the day. It's like, oh, no, I've been asleep. And it was fine, but now I should wake up. And it was a time for me to really reconnect to my intuition and to my gut and to higher power, the universe, the whole 9 yards. Like, I just thought, I'm lost. It was like, no, I know where to go. I just have to really pay attention. And it's funny because I see this theme in some of my characters in what I've written since. It's just this idea of like being in a different place and then thinking, I got to do something different. And what are those catalysts, and what are those bells that ring that wake us up, and how we act on them or not, and what are the consequences either way.
So how did this manifest? What did this motivate you to do? Like what did it send you on another track?
It sent me more definitively onto the track that I've been on, but a track that I had started to become aware that I needed to shift to. That it was like, yeah, I don't want to be doing this, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with this, but I need to be over here. And just making that energetic shift and trying to dismiss expectations of other people, or you're too old to be making this shift. What are you thinking? Well, you can't do that now. Well, you should have done that 10 years. All these, which were sometimes voices in my head and sometimes actual people telling me this. And so it was like, oh, right, I have to disappoint some people. I have to find ways to let things go that ordinarily I would worry about a lot. And that was a ton of internal work for myself that I guess people would have done by that point, but I hadn't done it.
Well, and sometimes you figure out much later that the people who are saying these things are actually talking to themselves about themselves. Like, it's too late for me, I believe, to make these changes. I'm just sort of like putting that on you.
I had a woman, when I was having my going away party at the office, because I had decided to move to LA and focus on being a performer, a writer, and in television and film primarily, of which I had no credits. I had no agent. I had no connections out here. I had friends out here, but it was really like, what are you talking about? I was at this going away party, and most people were so nice and so supportive. And this older woman came up to me and said, you know how Hollywood is. Now, this is a woman who was not a Hollywood person, not a creative. She wasn't involved in television or film or theater in New York. Lovely woman. But she said, you know how Hollywood works. You're about 15 years too old. You're supposed to go there when you're in your teens, and therefore you won't succeed. And it's going to be very hard for you. And it's going to be harder when you have to come back with your tail between your legs. And I thought, oh, gosh, you could look at it that way.
Right.
Or I could think, I'm exactly as old as I need to be to go there and try this. Every day I've had in my life has led up to this day. I could not have gone. In fact, talk about intuition. When I would come to visit friends in L.A., nothing about L.A. invited me. Nothing drew me to it. No, thank you. And every time I flew back to New York, I loved it. I loved being there. I loved everything about it. And so when I was contemplating this big life change, I came out to visit friends, and for the first time, it was like, oh yeah, ding ding ding, this is where, this will be a good place for a while. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, you're going to meet people. You don't know. Come on out, do this now. So I was like, I'm going to do this now, and everybody was like, oh, Deb.
Well, but the thing about LA that I know now after being here for 9.5 years is that there is no rule. There are no rules. There isn't a path.
Right.
You come here thinking there's a path and there's a set of rules that you need to follow.
Or that you've already broken and you didn't even realize.
But the fact of the matter is, it's virtually random.
It is.
It's like you need to. It's in front of you, so you constantly have to move forward.
Yes.
And make progress and keep doing work. But where it is in front of you, it's not a straight line.
No.
But it might be a straight line.
Right.
You never know. But it's more like if you keep walking forward, you might just stumble upon it.
Yes. And isn't that fabulous? Like, isn't that a fantastic?
Well, it depends
wonderful...
on the type of how you're wired, right?
Yes.
Type
but
A, or if you're
if
type A personality.
Yeah. But because that's true. I mean, look, if you're trying to be an ingenue on a very specific type of ABC primetime network show, you need to get here looking a certain way, being a certain way at a certain age. That's more or less a guideline. I won't call it a rule, but yes, the guidelines of kind of what. But other than that, everybody's making it up. Everybody's making it up.
Yes.
As they go. And that to me is a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And so that, I think, combined with, I think I just decided I'm not going to compare this to New York. I'm not going to compare my journey here to anybody else's, no matter how where they come from, how old they are, what they've been doing, what degrees. It's like, nope, I'm not going to go down that path because it's not going to help me. What's going to help me? And part of that is just I'm deciding that this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it's going to look like, so I can't be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't have a set idea of what exactly it's going to be, which is why it's particularly weird that basically 3 years ago, I suddenly started getting very serious about writing for the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why on earth would you move to LA to be a playwright from
Right,
New York?
yeah.
Like, I don't really
Right.
get it, but that's how it worked out. That's what happened, and so that's the perfect path. You know what I mean? Like, that's
It's
exactly
perfect path
what
because it's just the path that you took.
because it's the path that I'm on, and it's going really well.
Yeah.
It's going great.
Yeah.
And more than it's going great by outside measurements, I'm really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm improving as a writer. I feel like I understand more about my voice in the chaos of the world, and that's a revelation and a very energizing realization. And if people respond to it, that's a bonus. If someone wants to produce it, oh my God, that's great. But the process of creating it is more fulfilling than it's ever been. Even when it's like, this is terrible, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in it, and it's moving forward, and I'm kind of in love.
And do you think that's because you came to it and became serious about it later, like when you weren't youthful and
It's funny because I feel like when I moved out here.
Not that you're not youthful, you know what I mean.
No, what are you saying? No, I feel like when I moved out here, I dropped about 12 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I don't mean in how I look, I mean in how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because of the situation I had put myself in my work in New York and my state of mind there versus my state of mind by the time I moved out here, which was really like 2003. So it wasn't right after 9/11, but it was just that whole period of time where I was doing a lot of work and a lot of processing. And in that, I felt like I had sort of found the fountain of youth. And I think what that is being connected.
Mm-hmm.
And being willing to take risks and make bold choices and understand the consequences and keep moving forward. Like that whole process, I don't think I could have figured out any earlier than I did. I think everything had to happen exactly the way it did for me to get to that point. And I think that process has made me feel more youthful, more engaged, more on the right track for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it was hard won, but I feel like that's the work that has enabled me to be at this point. And I'm still acting and I'm still performing and happily wearing a bunch of different hats.
Mm-hmm.
And willing to just see what happens next.
So you came to LA in 2003, and how long did it take for you to start getting acting work?
Not very
Like, did you have to rely on your corporate, experiences to sustain life and get a job and all that?
I had saved. I'd started saving money in 2001 and just really socking it away, so I knew I would have a little bit of a cushion. But I also was I did some work as a professional organizer for people, and it's funny because I was working for this one woman who was a writer who actually got a gig on the Fox lot, writing a movie for them. And so she wanted me to come and set up her office there. And so I came onto the lot, and I was walking down the hall one afternoon, and I saw the name of a casting person that actually had been a graduate in the dance program at the University of Alabama when I was there as an undergraduate. And of course I went home and realized that he was casting all these shows. So the next time I went to work on The Office, I just stopped by the office. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here. He was like, Deb, hi, what are you doing here? I was like, oh my God, so good to see you. That's great. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm just on the lot for an audition. I just wanted to stop in and say hello. And he was like, oh, great. And he cast me in a TV show.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so I also worked as a sort of an assistant and an editor for a friend of mine who had written a book, and he wanted to make a screenplay, have a screenplay written of it. And it was a complicated story about it, but I thought I could write that. I could turn that book into a screenplay. And so I went home and wrote like 20 pages. And the next time I went into the office to work for him, I said, I just started writing this, but you should just read it if you want. And I just thought, I could do this for you if you wanted. And he was like, oh, thanks, I'll read it later. And then about half an hour later, he was like, I'm just going to go to my car for a minute. And he took it with him, and he came back in and he said, I want to hire you to write this as a screenplay. And I was like, great. And I had no idea how to write a screenplay.
What gives you the nerve? What gives you the nerve to do that? Like, what inside you says, I can do this thing I've never done before?
I don't know, but I had no doubt. I didn't even think about it.
Wow.
And I think it might be ignorance, blissful, blessed ignorance. Right. And I think the other thing is that I in that moment was very connected. And I felt like, yeah, I can do that. I wasn't walking down the street watching someone pour concrete and go, you know what? Step aside, I can do it. This was like in my wheelhouse. I knew him. I knew the book. Mm-hmm. And I thought, it's formatting, right? Like, it's just formatting. It's storytelling. I know how to tell a story.
Yeah.
My family's been doing it for years. I can do this. And it was great because it really it was an amazing experience for me working with him and these other people that were brought in to help shepherd the whole process and project. And then I had a screenplay, an adaptation that I'd written, and then I started writing screenplays and short films with a fury. I really got into that, and I also was was an Alliance Theater member. They were in Burbank for a while, and when I first got here, I did some plays with them, and I enjoyed that. Great people. I was frustrated by how hard it is to get an audience in theater, in live theater in this town. That it's really, it's a lot of work to do it right, to really put on a good play and a proper production, and it's hard when people don't come. Now that said, I was able to get a great acting agent through that, performing in that theater company, and I'm with him still. So it's, I was lucky in that regard. But I decided to it was calories in, calories out. Like, I was very much focused on what do I want to put my energy into, and what am I going to get out of it. In any regard, not just is this going to lead to a new gig or am I going to meet, but really what am I getting out of it? What do I feel like at the end of the day after having spent a day doing it? And I was not focused on theater for a while.
Now, at what point did you, and maybe you aren't this way now and never got there. I certainly haven't, but have you found comfort, like where you're not struggling? I don't mean necessarily financially, but like about your passion, about your work. Like, did you get to a point where you're like, it's just happening and churning and I'm just going and going?
You mean the
Has everything? I guess another way to say it is, has it always been? Have you always been struggling? Have you felt like you struggled and then you sort of connected and are now just working and getting work, or have you felt like you've been constantly just like fighting and struggling to get the next thing and then the next thing? Has there been any smooth sailing? I'm really being inarticulate. I think it's because I'm just coming back from having a plague.
No, that's fine. I'm tripping on the word struggling though, because I remember one time I was in New York and I went home to visit, and I don't know, my great aunt or someone who was upset that, you know, I was dating a Yankee. You know, my great aunt, she said, "Are you still a struggling actress?" And she meant it in a good way, like, "I'm worried about you." But I thought, oh, no, I'm not a struggling actress. I'm an actress looking for work.
Right.
And for some reason, the sense that it's like, oh, it's a struggle. I don't know. It's not that it isn't. What I feel like is has shifted is there's a flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not struggling to create a flow or to be in the flow. And sometimes I find myself looking outside, looking outward for confirmation of, is this the flow? Am I doing this right? Is this okay? And that almost always feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I don't get it, because if I can again tune back in and settle down all those sort of grasping outside of myself, if I can really tune in, I know exactly that it's fine. I know that I know that I have a million ideas. I know that I'm going to find the right words for this character to say. I know that I'm going to figure out how the scene ends. I know what happens on the next page. I just haven't thought of it yet.
So you're comfortable. So let's not use the word struggle or struggling. You're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in process, and you're comfortable
Yes.
in creation,
Yes.
in project to project, and what you're doing.
And it doesn't mean that I think every page is a gem. It doesn't mean that every word is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's, in fact, that, oh, this is a mess, but I can fix it next time I go back in. If I can hang on to that, which is more easy for me to do now than it was even
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, then I'm in it. Then it's still malleable. It's still it's in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
If I start having to think, oh, well, does that guy think it's still in front of me? Does that person think that this is a thing, that this is, that's a rabbit hole for
Mm-hmm.
me. And then I stop, and then I just get, I start, I can feel it around my ankles. I can feel it around my knees.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to get deeper and deeper, and it's like, forget it. Oh, never mind.
Right.
This is a dumb idea. This doesn't matter. No one's going to read it anyway. No one's waiting for me. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, they picked somebody else. Figures. It's like, yeah, don't just think a different way,
Mm-hmm.
because it's that easy to think a different way. Now, when you're in it, when you're in the hole and it's up to your hips, it's
Mm-hmm.
not that easy to think a different way. And I was in it up to my ears in New York. I was that deep.
I see you. I know a lot of people, especially here in LA, who I call slashers, like actor/director/ accountant / writer / But really, what I've noticed is most people are primarily a thing, and they will also do these other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of actors who are actors, and they might say they're a writer, but they're really an actor, and they'll do some writing.
Mm-hmm.
and I have found very few people who are truly multiple things in balance. And I find you to be one of those people who seems very much to be an actor and a writer, and not primarily one or the other, but both. And that was the sort of interesting thing about me getting to know you over the past few years, is that I only identified you in one way. And as I got to know you, you are in equal parts and in equal talents, both things.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. It's more of an observation than anything.
No, I'm taking it as a compliment. No, but I love them equally, so that's why it's meaningful to hear that, because I'm passionate about both of them.
Well, you're fantastic at both of them.
Thank you.
And the thing that makes me so curious is I so understand the life of a writer. Being a writer myself, I understand the life of a writer. You're kind of living your writer self constantly. You're either actually writing, or you're writing in your head, or you're thinking, or you're researching. And it's always like the focus is on the writing. And for me in particular, I get up in the morning and I write in the morning, and then I go do my day job, and the day plays out however it plays out. And that's just sort of how my writer life is. And a lot of writers are the same way. You're truly both. And so I'm very curious how you balance your day to day. Are you acting when you are preparing for an audition or preparing for a role? And when that isn't happening in your life, are you writing then? Or are you finding ways to carve out a balance of both of these things simultaneously all the time?
Definitely. I have more control over writing. I can schedule it. I can squeeze it in around other things. It's easy to make time for that every day.
And do you do that every day?
I do every day. Even if it's 30 minutes and that's it. And even if it's terrible stuff, I still do it. Acting, you get a call 8 p.m. Tomorrow morning, come in for an audition. You need to be wearing scrubs and have this page memorized. Suddenly, the whole next day has to shift around that. More and more, you get a call at noon. They want you at 3 o'clock in Santa Monica. You need to be in business attire. And here's the sides. And you have to memorize these. It's like, okay, so suddenly your afternoon changes and you have to get your butt home to shower and then you know what I mean? So it's very varied every day. And in fact, the being on call as an auditioner is probably one of the most frustrating things for me in this business, more than the rejection or the rooms full of other people waiting to audition for the same part that are trying to psych you out. I mean, there's nothing bugs me more than that idea that you're just sitting by the phone and you want an audition, you have to just jump. Whatever it takes, you just have to do it. But that's part of it. So it's very much day to day. Now, that said, I'm not lucky enough to get an audition every day. So, once a week, twice a week, when they come up, everything scoots around that. And so those are less predictable. And writing fits in everywhere else. And not just writing, but also, doing all these things to submit your writing to different places, and the little introductory essays, and tell us about yourself, and
the hustle.
Yeah, the business part of it. And so it's making time for all that. And
so the play that is running right now, Super Variety Match Bonus Round.
Yes.
That's the first time I said the title out loud.
That's fantastic.
Correctly.
You did very well.
You didn't write it for yourself.
I did not.
And
yeah, that's the other thing. I suddenly started writing plays, and there was no part for me.
Now, was there intention?
What the hell?
Is there an intention behind that? When you started to do that, were you just writing some idea that you had, and then you later realized, oh, I can't do this?
There's no part for me in this. Ugh. who wrote it? Who thought this up? But then you're in it. It's like, well, I'm just going to finish this. Yeah, no, it was just an idea I had, and I knew I wanted to participate in the Playwrights Union Play Challenge. And I didn't really know what the story was going to be, but I knew I had been focused a lot on the presidential primaries and sort of the tone of the election and this developing us versus them kind of mentality. And I'm sort of fascinated by the whole Airbnb concept of people just staying in strangers' houses, and it just seems like a big risk in a way to me. And so I thought, well, what if you had this couple that was stuck in their lives and they had something happen that caused them to hunker down and be fearful and stuck. And then you had someone come in and kind of bust open their little bubble, and what would happen. And so that's sort of all I had going into it. And I did kind of initially think, oh, this could be a good part for me. But she had to be older, and it wasn't. She wasn't me. I couldn't go out for this role. But February 1st started, which is when the Playwrights Challenge starts, and then you have to start writing it. And so then it was, it was off to the races. And I figured out what the story was during the course of the month, and then I had a play.
So what on February 1st, what did you have? What did you start with?
I wanted it set in Guano, Texas. And
Why? What's significant about that town?
Well, it's a fictional town, but it's a small town. I'm a little bit obsessed with Texas. That I just find it fascinating in a way that other, for example, Alabama, Georgia. I know some people think Texas is the South, but it's really Texas. And I think of the South as sort of deep South as its own thing. And it's so big. It's freakishly big. And you don't realize just how big until you're driving across it. But there's so many little towns, especially in West Texas, where I just pictured this couple who they're getting by, but but they don't know how to change things. And also the idea in a relationship, what if one person really wants things to change and the other really doesn't? But they don't want to separate, they don't want to leave each other, but they have to figure that out. And on a bigger scale, can you change somebody that isn't ready to change? Like how you pull them along, or how you hit them on the back of the head with a cast iron skillet. All the different ways you can try to get someone, gently or not so gently, to the next moment in their lives. And that's what I started out with. And I knew that they would have rented their son's bedroom to a stranger through a site like Airbnb for a big desert music festival. And they don't know anything about this person, and what could possibly go wrong? So
it's a great setup, because you have, very simple conflict. One wants change, one doesn't want change, and then a stranger is introduced. It's classic. Did you not start this play knowing the change that happens later? And I'm just trying not to spoil anything.
Well, I know, and so many of the reviews already spelled it out.
They all basically have.
And the title does set a certain expectation, but I didn't. I won't say that. I did have a feeling. because I actually thought the whole game show element was going to be a different play.
Mm-hmm.
But I've
totally
always
separate
been
play.
totally
Okay.
separate play, because I've always been obsessed with game shows because they're portals to alternate universes,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's talking about it, but it's real. And this idea that you enter this space and it's very shiny and stakes are very high and everything can change, and it's a little bit loud, and you have to make decisions and answer questions really quickly, and you don't
Right.
know what's going to happen next, and everybody seems to know what's happening next except for you, and then you're just an ordinary person, but suddenly ding 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 ding, and
Right.
and then thank you so much for bye, and it's just like this bizarre, forced, time sensitive reality that happens during which really important things take place, and so I thought that's where that's an environment that is ripe for big transitions, short amount of time, and you gotta be in it. You gotta be in it. You can't just leave. A contestant doesn't just walk off the stage. Like, you have to stay on stage, and if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. Wah, wah, wah.
Right.
Oh, and the audience, everybody's. But you're on stage. You got to finish playing the game.
So at some point during the writing of this play, you brought that idea, not from the beginning, but
No.
during process, you were like, you know what? I'm combining these two ideas
Yes,
into a
and
single
their
play.
guest, this very modern kid, was going to be the Puck. Was going to be, in this midsummer world, and the mail carrier was going to be the Titania, and so it was going to be this this orchestration, this otherworldly interference from another realm that was going to help guide these two people to their next reality. And sometimes we skip happily into that reality, and sometimes we're dragged kicking and screaming. But the cameras keep rolling, and ding, ding, ding. You gotta hit the buzzer. You gotta hit the buzzer. So that's sort of the all the different elements that got layered in during those. It wasn't even 28 days, by the way. Like, the readings were like,
it was much shorter than 28
First of all,
days.
it's the shortest month
Right.
to start with, but then it has to be at the final weekend, which is never on the 28th.
It's totally unfair.
I just wish somebody would point that out. But so then during that month, I sort of figured out that this is where they have to go. And also, I will say that I do remember a point at which I thought, I can't show this to anybody.
But you have no choice. And for people who aren't aware, which is probably most of you listening, the Playwrights Union is an LA playwrights group. Deb and I are both part of the same group. And every February we do this challenge where members of the group will write an entire play from soup to nuts in the shortest month of the year. And then everybody who participated in the challenge gathers in the last weekend of the month, and we read every single play that was written from beginning to end together over the course of 2 or 3 days, depending on how long it takes. And it's a massive marathon to write all month long, and then a huge marathon to read them over the course of a weekend, because we're all reading each other's plays.
Right. We don't bring in actors and
No,
directors, and
it's
it's
exhausting.
No, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But very rewarding.
Well, particularly for you. And I'm wondering if you want to talk about that a little bit, because what happened with you was like magical and wonderful, kind of like your play is magical and wonderful, where you just wrote this play in February, and then it opened in the same year, and when you wrote it, you had no plans. It wasn't a commission or anything. You were just writing it because you wanted to write it.
No, I never had a play produced like this in my life.
So talk about.
I'd produced things I'd written myself in performance art situations, but No, this had never, in fact, literally as I was writing it, I remember telling my husband, I'm not going to show this to the group because I had just joined the Playwrights Union, and I thought they don't really know my work. Like I had done a couple of the writing groups of the 10-minute kind of thing, but then I don't. This isn't. I'm not going to show them. And as soon as I thought I'm not going to show anybody this, I'm just going to drop out. I couldn't write fast enough. Like it was just sort of pouring out of me then because I thought it doesn't matter because nobody's going to see it. And then he was like, fine, you don't have to show it to anybody. No, that's fine. Just go ahead and finish it. And I was like, I'm just going to finish it, but I'm not going to show anybody. He was like, yeah, do that. And then at the end I thought, no, screw it. Why not? It's nothing's going to, it's not going to, so I might as well. Yeah. Just read it. Oh, nobody's going to care. No, nobody's going to care. So read it, got really good feedback from everyone there. Went and did some rewriting. We did the reading for the public with actors in the beginning of June. And a friend of mine who I'd known from Alabama days, he and I did summer stock. There used to be a summer stock in Birmingham, Alabama that would bring in all these headliners. And there was a summer where I did Lil Abner with Bruce Jenner, when Bruce Jenner was Bruce Jenner. We did Guys and Dolls with Joe Namath, who played Scott Masterson. And so it was the summer of athletic luminaries, but it was so much fun. It was the best. So that same summer stock theater, Cameron Watson worked at when he was younger. And so I knew him from years and years ago.
And he worked as an actor at the time?
He worked as an actor at the time. And now he's a much renowned and celebrated director, as well as he's still an actor, but directing a lot of theater out here. And he came to the reading and he loved it. And he said, I want to get this to some people. I want to see it. And I was like, yeah, great. Thinking, well, whatever.
Right.
And then August he called and said, are you sitting down? And I said, yeah, even though I wasn't. He said, no, I mean it. Are you sitting down? Rogue Machine wants to produce it. And I was thinking, a workshop in the spring. Like, how exciting.
Yeah, right.
That's fantastic. And he said, we're going to go start casting it in a couple of weeks. And I thought, oh my God. I just started thinking of everything in the play. Like, it's so me. This play is it's so my most... I'm gonna start crying. It's just so intimately me, and I feel like
how so?
Because it's about trying to reach people who are lost, and loving them out of the recliner. It's about people getting back on their feet through this crazy kaleidoscope of sequins and choreography and sound effects and some of the most amazing musical snippets you've ever heard in your life. We had this amazing sound designer, Chris Moscatello. That was just, I would say, like a disco alarm, but with more anxiety. And he would go, and he'd go and he'd bring me back this disco alarm that was more anxious. And I just thought, oh my God.
So when Cameron said this to you, you were afraid of you started to feel anxious about revealing so much of yourself?
Yeah. And also the fact that this, because it was all happening so fast, that it again, like, well, but this isn't the way it's supposed to go. Well, how is that? Who says there are no rules?
Right.
And if other people are unhappy with the fact that this is falling out this way, that's...
Well, do you remember the conversation that you and I had at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
it's up to you.
Well, tell me. You tell me, because
this is what I remember. Is I was like, I had trepidation about telling you because it was everybody wants a production,
right? Exactly.
And so it feels like, oh well, I'm getting this thing that everybody else wants, and I don't want everyone to be upset with me about this good fortune and this, again, random set of coincidences that happened
as
to
if
fall.
you hadn't earned it, right? Like that was kind of what it felt like to me. Like what it seemed to me is like you felt like the perception will be that you hadn't earned it.
Because I felt like, well, I've been writing all my life. Yeah, I've been theater all my life, but I just joined the Playwrights Union. I really only have 2 other full-length plays that I consider worth submitting anywhere or having anyone read. And I mean, I'm surrounded by people that have dozens of plays, some of which have been produced all over the world, that are going to be seeing me have this production. And then I thought, this is I just remember your face, like hearing me say, well, this is going to happen, and it's actually happening really soon because they just so happened to have a slot become available, and Cameron was supposed to be directing this other play, which got pushed ahead, so he was available. So it was this weird confluence of events that would, you could never write into a script, or someone would say, what a stupid coincidence, and I don't believe it. And I just watched your face, and you were like, you just had this stream of consciousness of, I am so happy for you and good for you because you deserve it. I wish it were me, but I understand that. Like, it was just this, and I was like, yep, I know, yep, I know, yes. And you're like, but good for you, and I'm very happy for you, and I'm very proud of you, and I'm also jealous, and I wish it were me, but I understand. These are the way things happen. And it was just like, yes.
Because the truth of the matter is, we all have these jealousies. I am jealous of virtually every single friend I have, but I also want every friend I have to get all the things.
Yes.
And I love it when the people I like and the people who work hard get things. So I'm like, I can be simultaneously so happy and proud and jealous.
Well,
for me, that's okay.
Yes, I have the same experience. I can hold both of those things simultaneously and in equal parts, and it's good because I also don't think there's one pie and a certain number of slices,
right.
And so if you get a slice, that means I go hungry or my friend goes hungry. It's like it doesn't work that way, and yet you have this. It's just a fear. It's like a little kid fear of that, oh, this means I have to be alone now. It's like, no, calm down.
Right.
But yeah, there was also just I had to shift to, I'm going to enjoy everything about this for good and ill and unexpected and planned and be on this ride right now because this is what I have now. This doesn't mean anything different necessarily, and so this is what's happening now, and I feel so proud of the show, and I feel so proud of the production, and the cast is so great, and so that's my gift. That's what I got out of this, was that experience. And I go all the time. I go to every show because, I mean, first of all, I would just live in the theater if I could. If they let me, I would just live in a theater because it's just the best. And they're filthy, and I get it, but there's just something about like the idea of this is where truth is spoken through all this make believe that completely resonates with me. That this is, I just belong in there. So it's like I would just go hang out in a theater even if no one else was there. So being there every night for my play and just observing the audience reaction, even when they're really quiet and they're not laughing and they're on the edge of their seat, or they're really, and it's just seeing the actor. And I've been in so many plays where you're in a long run and you anticipate the laugh or you're waiting for it. And this cast is so good at just doing their thing and finding it fresh all the time and bringing the audience right along with them. So just watching that alchemy is the best. It's just the best.
What are you working on for the challenge this year?
I don't know.
Are you going to do the challenge?
I am. Are you?
I am, and it starts in 3.5 weeks.
I know, it's really soon. All I know is there's some sort of refugee camp involved.
Really?
I don't know. This is all I know is a refugee camp.
I
hope.
Know? I have no idea what I'm writing.
Oh my God.
Literally no idea. I love that it's what, January 6th or 7th right now when we're recording this. It's January 7th when we're recording this.
Yes.
And You have no idea what you're writing. I can't wait for the end of February
Oh my God.
to see an entire script of something magical out of you.
And from you. I'm literally perspiring right now just thinking about it. But no, it's going to be magical.
I agree. Let's end it there.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Deb Hiett. Go see her play Super Variety Match Bonus Round. It's currently running at Rogue Machine Theater in Los Angeles. It closes on January 22nd. Thank you to Danny Oliver, LA Stage Alliance, and At The Stage Magazine for producing the show. Go check out thisstage.la because it's a fantastic online site for performing arts in Los Angeles. Thank you to David at JTB Recording Studio in Los Angeles, Atwater, to be specific, for recording us. Thank you to the band International Pen Pal for providing our theme song, and thank you for listening. Next month, I'll teach you how to cough and sneeze into your arm to make sure anybody who touches your arm gets sick this winter.